You had this pretty wide-ranging interview with the Home Secretary. It was interesting in itself that she was prepared to go for the grilling. You didn't hold back. And the whole question about where we would go if this didn't work, and the whole issue then of the European over sort of arching
the ECHR,
and where we stood with that, having, you know, been part of the original signatories in setting the whole thing up.
Sure. Well, this is obviously a very emotive issue, small boats, but it is at heart a money issue too. You know, a lot of people are furious that it's costing the British state, the taxpayers, so much to put people up in hotels, the fact that there's a shortage of housing. All of this does feed into resources and economics as well. And we have to be careful about the language, Mark. Rishi Sunak, one of his 5 promises was legislation to stop the small boats. It wasn't actually stopping the small boats, because this is, of course, very, very contentious. We don't know when this bill is going to be presented to Parliament. It could be tomorrow. It could be later this week. There's lots of nervousness about it. The Home Secretary, she is in charge of presenting this bill and taking it through the House of Commons. There's likely to be a lot of contention. Labour will vote against it. The House of Lords, lots of members of the legal establishment there, they will vote against it. But I think why it's worth going back to this interview from the week before last with Suella Braverman, she said an awful lot of things. There was a lot of focus on will she resign, won't she resign. She gave a kind of veiled threat to resign. But in this interview with me, she was absolutely adamant that this legislation is going through. The legislation means the UK can stay in this European Convention of Human Rights. But in the words of one Whitehall Permanent Secretary, it tries to bend what's legally possible. That's a direct quote, albeit off the record, because the legislation tries to establish that the UK can deport people to a safe third country, be it Rwanda or someone else, even when they are appealing to the European Convention on Human Rights, the court in Strasbourg, for their ability to stay in this country. That would be a change. That is what we're not sure is legally possible. But in this clip that we're about to show you, this exchange with me, which I do think will become politically important, Mark, which is why we're going back to it, Suella Braverman says, as far as she's concerned as the Home Secretary, even with this new legislation, the option of leaving the European Convention on Human Rights altogether is still possible. Here she is.
Well, I'd say nothing's ruled out at the moment, and we are in the process of preparing our bill to be introduced into Parliament very soon. And my personal views are well known. What I want to deliver is a system whereby if you arrive here illegally, you'll be detained and thereafter swiftly removed. And if we can deliver that system and that framework, then we shouldn't need to leave the ECHR.
You'll know that British lawyers and MPs drafted the European Convention of Human Rights in the shadow of World War II. We were the first country to ratify it. Leaving it would mean only the UK plus Belarus and Russia in the Council of Europe were outside the ECHR. Would that be okay?
Well, I think that there are legitimate questions that we need to start asking relating to our membership of the European Convention of Human Rights and its operation in the United Kingdom. We've seen there's a politicised and expansionist court in Strasbourg that regulates the convention, sometimes at odds with British values, whether it's our ability to remove people to Rwanda, as we saw last year. The European Court on Human Rights intervened at the 11th hour to stop us from doing that, whether it's our ability to deport foreign paedophiles, whether it's our ability to police protests, whether it's the issue on resolving the issue of Northern Ireland legacy claims or legal claims brought against our own soldiers who fought in Iraq. In many instances of policy making, the Human Rights Act, what I call is part of the long tail of Blairism, its operation combined with the ECHR and the court have operated to stymie policy making.
You make a strong legal case with respect to Home Secretary, but the optics of leaving the ECHR are difficult. You've got the stomach to leave it, clearly. Has the Prime Minister?
At this stage, nothing's ruled out. We need to ensure that we fix this problem of illegal migration. That's my priority.
Now, we're expecting it to be the illegal migration bill. Suggestions that it will give the Home Secretary a legal duty to remove as soon as is reasonably practical. And there lies in the question, bearing in mind that the whole structure at the moment, they can't get anyone to Rwanda at the moment. There's no returns agreement with the EU because we're outside the EU. Where would be that third party that you would use as a channel? The nuts and bolts aren't there to put it into practice.
Maybe they're not. What the government's trying to do, though, is address public concern, and it is widespread public concern. Yeah, when Tory leaders when Tory MPs talk to the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers, this is what they go on about, because this is what's being raised in their constituencies again and again and again. And the situation is at the moment, if people come here and they're put up in hotels or whatever, it's not just the cost. Yeah, they're not detained in any way. They can just disappear, and many thousands do each year. And that is seen to sort of tear at the social fabric and be the incentive for people to risk their lives with the people traffickers to get in these unsafe small boats in the first place. But what will be fascinating, Mark, is Rishi Sunak, when he announces this bill, Suella Braverman, when she announces this bill, will they say again, as the Home Secretary just did then, and when she stood to be Tory leader, she said, we may need to leave the ECHR. Will they stress leaving the ECHR with all the outrage that will spark in the Lords, across the legal establishment, across the media? Will that still be an option? Will that still be on the table? That will be the litmus test of how serious the Prime Minister is when it comes to addressing this very, very contentious issue.
And what the political fallout would be as a result of it as well. Yeah, Liam, thank you very much.